Thank you indeed. I will do it in English. I can also answer the questions in German. My slides are in English, and the word digital Darwinism is in English, so hopefully that works. I live in New York City. I want to talk about customer relationships and digital Darwinism. I want to give an introduction. I want to talk about two examples, two industries. I talk about telecommunications, and I talk about automobile. And then afterwards, some of my co-speakers, if you will, talk in more depth about insurance, enterprise tech, and multi-channel marketing. And hopefully, during the course of this morning, we sort of see how digital Darwinism isn't something that affects some companies or some industries. It affects all of us. That's sort of my thing. I have a terribly looking slide to begin with. That slide was produced 1997 by Clayton Christensen, a professor at Harvard. Harvard is sponsoring this event, so I thought I should start with one slide, at least. Clayton Christensen, if you know, has become known for this idea of digital disruptive technology. And built in 1997, so many years ago now, 20 years almost, the theory that technology disrupts industries and categories. And the disruption usually starts from the low end. Some low-end solution develops. You as an established company with a credible product, with a customer base, with a high-quality service performance, you ignore the startup, the small, crabby technology. And the small, crabby technology, which is illustrated here by this black bar, slowly improves gradually and ultimately disrupts even the best companies. That was the theory of digital disruption. And I think that theory is true in some technology markets. To me, when I look at digital technology or disruption, I see one world. And when I go to digital Darwinism, I see another world. Digital Darwinism doesn't just start from the low end. Digital Darwinism isn't just about technology. So my key point is digital Darwinism is all about consumers. It's all about customers and how the customer relationship is disrupted. That is the difference. And if you are here in the Marketing and Innovation Forum, you ought to think a lot more about customer relationships that are being disrupted than about technology. Because technology sometimes wins and sometimes not. Sometimes it's a hype and sometimes not. The point is, I don't look anymore at the encyclopedia in order to find out where Joachimsthaler, my name, where my Joachimsthaler is in the Bohemian area. When I want to know where Joachimsthaler is and demonstrate it to one of my friends, I go on Google. I say Joachimsthaler, and I have the whole history of my name and where my father came from. Yeah, that's how things are changing. So that's my key point, actually, for the few minutes here. Technology does not disrupt industries or categories. Consumers do. And how consumers are changing. And rather than being obsessed with the latest technology, the latest app, the Flappy Birds of the world, and wonder whether this is just another hype or another sort of like thing that we should matter, we can actually see the future by looking at how consumers change their behaviors. That's what I think is so exciting. I want to give a few examples, but before I do that, I want to introduce Karl-Heinz Land. Karl-Heinz Land, a year ago, actually wrote a book called Digital Darwinism. He is the German Charles Darwin, if I may say, in the digital world. That's why he's up with us. And I wanted to attribute this thought to him because Karl-Heinz has last time together jointly organized this conference with us, and he's here if you wish to talk to Karl-Heinz about digital Darwinism in more detail. You know, when you talk about digital Darwinism, this is sort of the examples that everybody talks about. People talk about AOL and Kodak. That has been now almost history, USPS or Yellow Pages. And then you talk about this digital evolution from Yahoo and BlackBerry, called today, I work for Circuit City, couldn't help there. Blockbuster, if you know, that was disrupted by Netflix. And then I talk about Microsoft, that now doesn't look as cool and inspiring anymore in the face of Google, Facebook, and so forth, Best Buy, and so forth, that is beaten by Amazon and so forth. That's the general conversation. If you look at 80% of the conversation on digital Darwinism, it's about these companies. And I think that that's interesting. But I think what's more relevant is to look at some very traditional businesses. I want to show you a few of those. I go into telecom, I talk a little bit about automotive, and how I see these customer relationships being disrupted. And then again, my colleagues will discuss their own particular industries. This is Deutsche Telekom. In the United States, as we speak, Deutsche Telekom is producing a digital Darwinism in plain sight. It is a beautiful sight to see. What happened at Deutsche Telekom? In Deutsche Telekom in the USA is called T-Mobile, which is wireless services. What's interesting about it is that Deutsche Telekom acquired some spectrum, some technology, spectrum licenses, in order to offer wireless services to consumers. Using their technology, they are changing the way telecom is sold in America. In America, if you know, the number one is Verizon, has about $47 ARPU, which is average revenue per user. Then comes AT&T with 48. Then comes Sprint. And then after number 4, a much lower ARPU comes in revenue per user, comes Deutsche Telekom or T-Mobile. And currently, with a new technology available, the licenses, Deutsche Telekom is actually changing the game. And I like those kind of disruptions, not the disruptions through some big technology that will change everything, but it's the small disruptions that all of us can somewhat enact and actually do. This is John Ledger, the CEO of T-Mobile in the US. He says, they, AT&T and Verizon, are picking the pockets of the consumer. Come down and fight with us. He is the Robin Hood of the telecom industry in the US. He's like the Richard Branson right now, if you will, in the USA. Here's a few things he's doing. The customer relationship in the telco space, I don't know in Germany now, but in the US has been governed by two things. Number one, by the availability of a mobile phone. We all want that latest iPhone, all us fanboys of Apple. We all wait for iPhone 6 right now. So one of the things that governed the relationship was the cost of the iPhone, $700, you pay $200 up front, and then you have to pay monthly for the next 3-4 years. And then you are, after 3-4 years of customer relationship, you are then eligible for a new phone. That's how it works. That's called customer relationship. The second part of that relationship between customers and mobile phone carriers in the US is the contract. You have a 2-year contract or 3-year contract. If you leave that contract earlier, you have to pay cancellation fees. That's what they call customer relationships in America. So that, if you will, if you look at the customer relationship between an AT&T, Sprint, or Verizon, or T-Mobile until last year, it was governed by this almost like a tying contract, almost like a locked-in contract, staying with a carrier for some time. T-Mobile is putting away with all of that. They changed, they offer now no contracts. You have no down payment on an iPhone. If you want to switch today from one phone to another phone or to a carrier, they offer to pay you $500 to switch carriers. And what is happening right now, as we speak, because of the availability of technology, but not because of that, but because of what T-Mobile does in those sort of various aspects, early termination fees, elimination. It disrupts the entire US mobile phone industry, or cellular industry, or wireless industry, if you will. Here's a good example, and this is how it works. These lines do only change gradually. On the top you have Verizon. We are in a growing market in the US, and then you have AT&T. They are always growing. T-Mobile has been always the stepchild in this. But look at what happened in quarter two, right here. It's the first time in 5 years that you see a step function toward growth for T-Mobile. If you look at the ARPU measures on the top, you see Verizon 57, T-Mobile has 46. So T-Mobile makes a lot less money in the US than all these other Verizons. And T-Mobile is changing that in a significant way. T-Mobile tries to push that as where it is right now in the European Union, about $27 per user. It's an interesting story to me. But this is what is disruption all about. This is Darwinism. This is not waiting and hoping for another peer-to-peer technology like Skype. This is not about waiting for another search optimization or search algorithm like Google. This is how you as a CEO or CMO can develop actions to create digital Darwinism. This is an example from the automotive industry. This is cool stuff. My brother is an engineer in automobile. He loves this stuff. This is carbon fiber. This is the new i3 Karosserie in German. It's the coolest thing. It's the lightest weight thing you can get. Every engineer will talk about carbon technologies and the investment BMW is making in that technology. BMW bets on that technology. It produces a chassis that is about 20% less heavy than the Nissan Leaf. And Nissan Leaf, if you know, is the lowest weight car in the entire car industry right now. So even the lowest weight car, is beaten by this new technology called carbon. That's a great thing, right? Oh, there is more to that. This is authentic BMW. The performance, the driving machine. We call it ultimate driving machine in America. Here's the thing. The Nissan Leaf goes from 0 to 100 in 11.2 seconds. You drive that i3, you beat the Nissan Leaf by 4 seconds from 0 to 100. Isn't that cool? Well, people say that's cool. My brother, as an engineer, finds this extremely cool. That's digital Darwinism. It's changing the game. The electric car is coming. The combustion engine is dead. I don't find that so interesting. What I find interesting is actually this. I found out from BMW how they changed the customer relationship. When you look at BMW or any automotive industry company, what's the biggest problem? The biggest problem with the automotive business today is that every 3 years, a consumer goes in a store and says, or drives around and says, my lease is coming up. Look at my car. Look at my neighbor's car. They have some new models out there. Gee, I ought to change my car. Why don't we get another car? I saw the new one. I really like that one. Every 3 years, the same story happens. And what happens in the 3 years between one purchase and the other purchase? Well, nothing. If anything, you go to the dealership and you have your car serviced for oil change or the tire changes or something. So fundamentally, The biggest problem in the automotive industry is not the lightweight of the chassis. Fundamentally, the biggest problem in the automotive industry is the customer relationship. Because every 3 years, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen needs to pour gazillions and gazillions of dollars or euros into advertising in order to make you believe that your current car is not as good, even though it would drive another 100,000 miles or kilometers. But no, there is this new thing that is in that new car, the new looks, and it makes you go to the dealer in order to get and switch the car. You don't need another car after 3 years. You don't need it after 6 years. You know, they have a quality movement in the automotive industry. The cars run for 300,000 kilometers today, but nobody of us drives anymore 300. So the biggest problem is every 3 years, the car manufacturers need to establish a new relationship with you. You know, they even have predictive models where they can predict that, oh, this one right here, this guy right there, he's ready for a new car. You know, they have these models to predict, and then they pour advertising after advertising into beautiful image advertising. In America, they pay $4 million for 60 seconds in the Super Bowl. You know, and that's the problem. But here's the thing. BMW, and I think you will agree with me, is about to change the game. And they are experimenting. So this is not a done deal, and it's not necessarily successful. But they are about to change with these cars. You know, it's an electric car. Everybody says, how do you market an electric car? Well, I know. I appeal to the young, youthful, tree-hugging, planet-saving type consumers. BMW doesn't do that. It doesn't even fit to the ultimate driving machine. When BMW launches the i3 and the i8, they don't talk about environmental benefits, carbon footprint, and all that stuff I can worry about after life. What they do is they talk about something very different in this particular one. BMW has changed or is practicing a change in managing their customer relationship so importantly that they even had to change their mission statement. The mission statement last year, in the beginning of last year, was become the world's leading provider of premium cars and motorcycles. And then they changed it. The blue part and premium services for individual mobility was the newest tagline on their mission statement because of these new cars. And here's what they have done. Give you a few examples. Think Facebook, think Foursquare, think Google. Do you know Airbnb? You know, you can rent your apartment for the day, Airbnb. Think Airbnb. Think Zipcar. And then put that cool car and package that up all into one offering. And that is the offering of individual mobility of BMW. It's totally cool, my daughter would say. Yeah. For example, if you have this kind of a car, there is with a car, it's a very expensive one. It's a very expensive car. But with a car, you get a membership into what's called a Park at My House. Park at My House is you drive into Munich city, and the car automatically identifies parking garages of other BMW drivers that are available for $1, let's say, or euro, much less than what you pay in a public parking. And you can park at the parking garage of a friend, just like Airbnb, where you can rent for one night or for 2 nights your apartment here in New York for some visitors. They actually exchange parking garages of other BMW drivers. It's a network of BMW drivers. You know, what is your biggest problem when you drive in the inner city, Marienkirche in Munich? It's a parking problem. But right now with this one, it automatically identifies, oh, there's another BMW driver. He's at work, or he's in Tuscany right now for 3 days. That garage is available for 3 hours. You can put your car right there. Isn't it cool? That solves my problem. That solves individual mobility. They have other things. For example, they have a system. The problem with these cars is you can't drive long distances, 150 kilometers or something. No problem with BMW. You can actually, on a Friday afternoon, you can drive up to BMW, swap this car for a gasoline-powered car, spend a weekend in Tuscany, Como, for example, Siena, a romantic weekend. You drive back, switch the car, and you get to work. Isn't that cool? An exchange. Now electric cars make sense. Oh, you can't afford a car, you can't afford a BMW? No problem. Zipcar, the model in Zipcar. You can, like Zipcar, you can actually rent these cars by the minute. You can drive with your SUV, if you will, go take your children to soccer practice, and a second later, you can switch into this cool 1.8 and be part of the Schickeria in Munich. Isn't that cool? See, what's so interesting about that is BMW is changing, at least they are practicing. It's not perfect, but they are changing their way to manage customer relationships. No more every 3-year advertising and, the Werbemühle, Trommeln, if you will. They have, with this kind of information, they have data, exactly what your driving patterns are. They can actually recommend you better routes to go to Siena or to Como next time you go to Italy. They can actually know exactly what usage you have in car. They know exactly when you need a second car or a third car. They have a continuous relationship. And I think that's what digital Darwinism is all about. It's thinking about how you manage that customer relationship, how you go on an off and on and off and on relationship to a continuous relationship and deliver another value, mobility. This one solves my problem. In New York City, this one solves my problem. A BMW gives me a lot more headaches. A big down payment, a big monthly payment, no parking. You know the problems in New York. So just quickly, some guidelines and some thoughts that I thought are sort of come out for me, and hopefully you'll use them a bit as a guide during the course of the morning. So one thing is consumers, when you think about it, when that BMW driver of the i3, drives around, he, in a way, draws a map to their doors. He, in a way, tells us how he uses a car, what is his mobility challenges in a daily life, whether he lives in a city, whether he lives out of the city, how many times he goes to Italy, and so forth and so forth. And for us marketers, it is not about dreaming romantic dreams about this next technology and this next revolution and this next sort of digital something. For us, the challenge as marketers is to configure and figure out how that map looks like, rather than asking consumers in a survey, in a questionnaire, how can we really redraw that map of the life of consumers? And then do our marketing accordingly. That's one thing. Consumers' preferences shift daily and hourly. It's amazing in the car industry how that changes. Literally, daily and hourly. It is changing the preferences of how they prefer one car over the other. Consumers is the channel. Quickly, some examples. Of course, everything has to do with a mobile phone. One example. This is an example from our company. We work in the beer industry. This is how the beer industry looks right now. Declining sales. Everyone declines in the beer industry. So how do you solve that? The beer industry. What we have done now is, in order to understand the problem more profoundly, we have asked consumers. We didn't ask consumers what they like. Do you like a Budweiser more than a Beck's, than a Bitburger, than a this? If we were to ask consumers that question, they would tell us the obvious. Yes, I like Beck's. Yes, I like Bitburger and so forth. Yes, I like Budweiser. Here and there and here and there. We did something very different. We asked consumers with a mobile phone device we call mobile episode tracking to track every episode of drinking something. anything they drink. And from that, we analyze the episodes. What happens before that? What happens after that drinking? What happens while you were drinking something? And you know what's sort of interesting about this is when you ask consumers, you learn something that is oftentimes just obvious. When you study the episodes of consumers' daily life, of how they live around socializing, happiness, love, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. When you look at the relevant episodes of consumption, and here it is about drinking something, spending time with friends, you actually reveal a very different picture. You start developing the contours of that map that consumers draw for us. What I say is, here's sort of just an example. Looks a bit random, but here's the trick. Consumers can tell us what they like, but they cannot tell us why. And it is for us to discover that. And if we understand that why of consumption, not by asking them, by discovering them, then we use the power of these new technologies and we understand digital Darwinism better. We did a study recently, just completed. We asked in America, how advanced is digital Darwinism among consumers? How much do they really use technologies? We ask consumers, how many times a day you actually use a device? 3 different devices, mobile phone, tablet versus a computer, and how many times you go online. What's interesting is that 48% of all Americans today are what we call always on. They are accessing internet in 3 different places, home, work, and maybe on the train. They have 3 devices they use to access online, and they do it more than 3 times a day. It's interesting. Look at what is happening here. From 2010, just 3 years ago, it was just 1/4 of Americans. Today, it's over 50%. By looking at that consumer, those 48%, you can reveal a bit the future digital consumer even today. We did some segmentation of that, and we looked at what are those consumers. It's a very, very interesting result. It shows, for example, that not all really want to engage with brands. 20% on the right side, ad blockers, don't want to talk to brands at all. Number 27% mindful explorers, 18% focus groups. That's about 43% or 45%. 45% are extremely selective of connecting with a business or with a brand at all. So what's so interesting is we all use devices. We all use texting. We all communicate. We all engage. We all share. But connecting with brands and business like yours, very few people do. So it's an incredibly difficult marketing challenge, this. I want to go on. I want to go quickly further. Second, when you think about this always-on consumer and this rapid change in technologies and digital, it, in my opinion, requires a new model of building brands and doing marketing. It sort of fundamentally changes how you do things. If I work in the alcoholic beverage industry, who of you does not work in the alcoholic beverage industry? I think all of us do, right? A bit, occasionally a bit. I work actually professionally for one of my clients. But anyway, in the alcoholic beverage industry, there is not a single campaign you can run. Like 1 campaign a year or 2 campaign a year, like Dove campaign or an Axe campaign that Unilever runs. In the alcoholic beverage industry, you have all very short-term runs on campaigns today. When you look at the alcoholic beverage industry, you look at digital on today, you have even less campaign thinking. You almost have to react on an always-on basis. This is a study. It is available here from somebody at the door. This is a study that looks at how the marketing job is changing, how the CMO job is changing in this new world of digital. From a system of campaign-centric thinking to a faster, effective, efficient, and more fluid system. I don't have time to get through that. I want to give you one example of the last example that I have to review, to just give you an illustration of how this works. Burberry is a company that is a very traditional business, 150 years old. It's a typical fashion business. Fashion businesses are fairly simple businesses. Every year, twice a year, in the major cities, Milan, Frankfurt, Munich, New York, Paris, you have a catwalk. You organize this week in New York, the Fashion Week, where you show the latest models, through the latest models, the latest collection, and then you take the orders from the retailers, the buyers, and the buyers then will have it in the shop 6 months later or something. And you hope that you sell. Usually it doesn't sell. Then you have to mark it down, or if you're not strong enough, the retailer will the store will send it back and it gets a discount, consignment selling. The relationship between a customer and a fashion house hardly exists. It's basically going to the store, but you rarely ever have a relationship with Burberry directly. Burberry changed that in a significant way. Who goes to those catwalk events? Karl Lagerfeld, Dieter von Teese, some different kind of people than me and you. But Burberry changed it. Burberry said, all of us, all consumers, can participate in those fashion shows today. What Burberry does is, Burberry videotapes this fashion show when they take place. And if you have signed up with Burberry, you can actually see the fashion show online, and exactly how Karl Lagerfeld and Dieter von Teese and David Beckenbauer and Victoria Beckham will see the same thing. Now, here's the thing. Burberry made a change. They actually videotaped the rehearsals. So when you videotape the rehearsals, they happen before the actual show. And Burberry will send you those videotapes online even before you actually see the actual fashion show. And what happens then? All consumers around the world can see online the latest collection and actually can tweet those collections, that's why it's called Tweet Walk, to their fans. So Burberry gives the look of the new collections to every consumer even before it gives it to everyone. This was so successful around the world that 20 million people signed up. Guess what they do now? What they do now is called Runway to Reality. Runway to Reality is when you see those videos, you can actually purchase the item on those videos as you see them. So you don't ever have to go to a store. You can buy it directly. Think of this. You buy a $1,000 jacket. 20 million people buy a $1,000 jacket on the click, on the computer. They don't ever have to go to a store. And in this way, Burberry is changing the relationship it has with its customers. It knows already what sells even before the buyers bought it. They know the sales instantly when they run those videos. That's how the customer relationship is translating. I finish here. This is the thoughts I had for you. Thinking about disruption and digital Darwinism from a consumer perspective, how consumers draw that map, and how we can cue our marketing, how consumers change preferences. And I want to thank you very much.